Sidwell had always believed that fear was a better weapon than any gun. Fear lingered, it corroded, it made people destroy themselves long after the threat had passed. When he cornered Laura in her own home and forced her to confront the terrible secret she shared with Sonny, he walked out of that house certain of one thing. Port Charles was full of people who pretended to be strong, but underneath, they were all breakable. Laura's shaken composure, the flash of terror in her eyes as he pressed invisible fingers against the life of someone she loved, had confirmed it. He had leverage, and leverage meant opportunity. But as he stepped into the cold night air, one name burned brighter than all the others in his mind: Sonny Corinthos. Threatening Laura had merely been a prelude. The real symphony of destruction, Sidwell thought, would begin when he brought Sonny to his knees. Sidwell's obsession with Sonny didn't grow out of simple jealousy or greed. It was something older, deeper, almost pathological. For years, he had watched Sonny navigate Port Charles like a man who believed himself untouchable, protected by loyal enforcers, a code of honor, and an entire town's uneasy dependence on his power. Sonny paid off debts, protected some, destroyed others, and even when he was at his lowest, the universe of Port Charles seemed to bend around him and eventually let him rise again. Sidwell saw in Sonny a symbol of everything that had denied him legitimacy, a man who wielded violence and loyalty like twin swords and was still allowed to sit at family dinners and hold babies in his arms. To Sidwell, Sonny's survival was proof that the rules were rigged, that morality in this town was nothing but theater. Destroying Sonny wasn't just about winning a turf war or gaining territory, it was about exposing that hypocrisy and proving to himself that a man like Sonny could bleed, could fall, and could be remembered not as a hero, but as a cautionary tale. After the confrontation with Laura, Sidwell retreated to his safe house, a cramped but meticulously organized apartment overlooking the river. There, maps of Port Charles were scattered across a long table, covered in red circles and scribbled notations. Photos of Sonny's known associates were pinned to a corkboard: Jason, Dex, Ava, Carly, Nina, even Laura herself. Lines connected faces to locations, tracing patterns of movement, routines, and vulnerabilities. Sidwell had spent months collecting this information, but until his victory with Laura, he had lacked the catalytic moment to set everything in motion. Now he had it. Laura's silence, bought with veiled threats against someone she loved, gave him confidence that she wouldn't run to Sonny immediately. She would stall, rationalize, try to fix things quietly. That gave him time. And Sidwell was dangerous when given time. His plan to attack Sonny was not straightforward assassination. A simple bullet to the head in a dark alley was too quick, too generous. Sidwell wanted Sonny to feel hunted in his own territory, wanted him to look at every person in his orbit and wonder who had betrayed him. He began by targeting the edges of Sonny's world. A shipment went missing at the docks, not enough to cripple his operations, but enough to raise suspicion. A rumor was planted about a federal investigation creeping closer, with Sidwell quietly feeding information to the right ears so Sonny's name kept surfacing in whispered conversations. Anonymous tips found their way to people's Sonny trusted, making it seem as though someone in his inner circle was cooperating with law enforcement. All the while, Sidwell watched from the shadows, savoring the unease that began to ripple outward. But the true centerpiece of Sidwell's plan lay in something more personal. He wanted Sonny's paranoia to spread like a virus, infecting his relationships. So he crafted an intricate web designed to turn Sonny's own instincts against him. He arranged for a small but deliberate breach in the security around someone Sonny cared about, not enough to cause real harm, but enough to prove that Sonny couldn't keep his world airtight anymore. A car followed too long. A shadow seen outside a window. A message with no name, only a photograph taken a little too close. Sidwell knew that once Sonny believed his family and allies were under threat, he would go from strategic to reactive. And reactive men made mistakes. However, for all his caution and careful planning, Sidwell overlooked one crucial detail. Sonny Corinthos had survived this long not just because he ruled through intimidation, but because he had learned to recognize the shape of an enemy's mind. Years of wars with rival families, federal investigations, and internal betrayals had honed Sonny's instincts to a razor's edge. Laura, shaken to her core after Sidwell left, was not as composed as she pretended to be. Though she didn't run straight to Sonny, the shift in her behavior was enough for a man like him to notice. She was too distracted, too guarded, her eyes constantly flickering toward the door as if expecting someone to reappear. Sonny did not push her. Instead, he watched, listened, and quietly put his own people in motion. The first sign that something was off came from the docks. A seemingly random disruption in his operations made no sense. Sonny's enemies were either too weak, too scared, or too dead to pull off something so precise. The kind of interference he was seeing didn't belong to impulsive violence, it belonged to calculated pressure. Then came the quiet chatter that his name was being tossed around by people who should have known better than to speak it so openly. None of it was definitive, but together, it painted a picture that Sonny could not ignore. A new player had decided to move against him in a way that felt eerily familiar, not in style, but in intention. Someone wanted to unnerve him before going in for the kill. Sonny began by tightening his circle. He ordered background checks revisited, reviewed recent financial movements among his associates, and quietly tested the loyalty of those closest to him with small, controlled leaks of false information. No obvious traitor emerged. The threat, then, was external, but somehow still intimately connected. That led his mind back to Laura. Her haunted distance, the way her voice caught when she talked around certain topics, and the strange defensiveness when he asked about her safety, it all clicked into place. Sonny knew Laura would never willingly betray him, but he also knew that anyone could be cornered if someone pushed hard enough. When a sudden anonymous message appeared, a distorted voice warning Sonny that the mayor is not the only one he's coming for, Sonny's patience ended. Sonny's first instinct was rage, but his second, more powerful instinct was survival. He realized that whoever was orchestrating these moves was smart enough to use Laura as a pressure point. That meant intelligence, research, and patience. Very few people had the resources and nerve to pull that off. When Sidwell's name surfaced during a quiet conversation with one of Sonny's informants, a name tied to whispered deals, digital footprints, and dark favors traded on the margins of legitimacy, Sonny's focus narrowed. He no longer saw a vague enemy. He saw Sidwell, a man who liked to think in terms of leverage, who had no problem turning fear into a currency. That made him dangerous. It also made him predictable. Sonny understood something that Sidwell didn't: fear cuts both ways. If Sidwell was willing to walk into Laura's life and weaponize her vulnerabilities, then Sidwell must be convinced he couldn't be touched. People who believed that were often the easiest to corner because they never saw the ambush coming. Sonny didn't argue with Laura or demand answers. Instead, he quietly placed men he trusted in her orbit, not to pressure her, but to observe. It wasn't long before they picked up patterns: unfamiliar vehicles loitering in the distance, faces that appeared once, twice, and then vanished, and a clear vantage point across the street that someone had been using repeatedly. Sonny followed the trail Sidwell thought was invisible, all the way back to the fringes of his safe world. What Sidwell believed was his hunting ground was, unbeknownst to him, gradually becoming Sonny Corinthos's trap. One cold night, as Sidwell returned to his hideout after another round of manipulations, he felt a flicker of unease he couldn't quite name. The street was darker than usual, the hum of the city sounded far away, as if he had stepped into a pocket of silence carved out from reality. Still, he convinced himself it was only nerves. He had just triggered the next phase of his plan, a carefully edited video prepared to leak at the perfect moment, designed to implicate Sonny in a crime that would be impossible to bury. The anticipation made his pulse quicken. He unlocked the door to his apartment, stepped inside, and never made it to the light switch. Hands seized him from behind, swift and brutal. A cloth came down over his mouth and nose, the world tilting and warping as he clawed at the darkness swallowing him. He tried to reach for the weapon at his waist, but his limbs felt heavy, disobedient. The last thing he heard before the world slipped away completely was the steady rhythm of boots on the floor and the sound of his own heart hammering uselessly in his ears. The predator had been taken mid-stride. Sidwell had wanted Sonny to feel helpless. Instead, he was the one waking up chained to a chair in a windowless room he didn't recognize. When Sidwell regained consciousness, the first thing he noticed was the silence. There were no traffic sounds, no distant voices, no hint of where he might be. The second thing he noticed was the pain, a deep ache in his shoulders and legs where restraints bit into his skin. The room around him was bare, lit by a single harsh bulb overhead that threw his shadow against the walls like a specter. He tested the restraints and found them unyielding. Panic rose in his throat, sharp and acidic, but he forced it down. Panic was for other people. He reminded himself that he had survived worse. Then the door opened. Sonny didn't stride into the room with theatrical rage. He entered calmly, quietly, with the measured composure of a man who had already decided what needed to be done. That, more than anything, unsettled Sidwell. He had expected fury, threats, shouting. Instead, Sonny's expression was controlled, his voice low, his eyes sharply focused. This was not a man out of control. This was a man who had taken control back and had no intention of relinquishing it. Sonny made it clear, without raising his voice, that the rules had changed. Sidwell's carefully built scaffolding of intimidation had been stripped away. Here, in this anonymous room, Sidwell had nothing, no leverage, no escape routes, no invisible power. The only currency that mattered now was information. And Sonny wanted every last piece of it. The interrogation did not rely on immediate violence. Sonny understood that pain could provoke defiance just as easily as it could break someone. Instead, he dismantled Sidwell's sense of superiority piece by piece. He recited details he should not have known: Sidwell's safe houses, the accounts he kept under false identities, the intermediaries he believed were untraceable. Sonny mentioned the moments Sidwell had shadowed Laura, the nights he lingered near the people Sonny loved, and the quiet ways in which Sonny's men had watched him watching them. Every revelation hit like a blow. Sidwell began to see that while he had been meticulously studying Sonny, Sonny had been studying him back. In this claustrophobic space, the roles reversed with frightening speed. Sidwell, who had built his reputation on exploiting fear, found himself forced to confront his own. He tried to bluff, to pretend he still had cards to play, threats he could unleash if Sonny went too far. But Sonny had already anticipated that. Device after device was confiscated, contacts cut off, backups neutralized. Sidwell realized he had no failsafe, no hidden ally who would come looking if he disappeared. The realization sank in slowly, like ice spreading through his veins. For the first time, he genuinely understood what it meant to be at someone else's mercy. Sonny didn't just demand to know what Sidwell had planned, he wanted the architecture of the entire operation, every step, every contingency, every name that had moved in the shadows on Sidwell's orders. He needed to know how far the threat extended beyond himself and Laura, who else had been compromised, what traps still lay in wait even with their mastermind in custody. As Sidwell tried to hold onto fragments of loyalty to his own vision, he found that vision increasingly hard to defend. The plan had always made sense in his head: strip Sonny of his power, expose the rot at the core of Port Charles, remake the rules in his favor. But shackled to a chair, staring into the eyes of a man he had believed he could break, the narrative began to fray. The longer the confrontation stretched on, the clearer it became that this was no longer just about who would win. It was about what would be left afterward. Sonny could have killed Sidwell and buried the problem in a shallow grave, as so many enemies before him had vanished. But that would have left unanswered questions, dormant threats, and a lingering vulnerability. Instead, he chose a path that was far more dangerous and complicated. He turned Sidwell into a resource. Every scheme Sidwell had set in motion was methodically dismantled, repurposed, or exposed in ways that strengthened Sonny's position rather than eroding it. Names that Sidwell gave under pressure became targets for counter-moves. Dead ends became openings. Sonny didn't just survive Sidwell's attack, he consumed it, folding it into his own strategy for protecting his world. In the end, Sidwell's greatest weapon became his prison. The intricate knowledge he had gathered about the weaknesses in Sonny's life now served to reinforce the very man he had tried to destroy. But this twisted victory came at a cost. The more Sonny learned about how vulnerable he truly was, how easily Laura had been cornered, how carefully his family had been watched without his knowledge, the more something inside him hardened. Trust, already fragile after years of betrayal and loss, became even more conditional. Allies were scrutinized with newfound intensity. Locks were changed, routines altered, barriers tightened around people he cared for. For Laura, the revelation of what Sidwell had planned and what Sonny had done in response would haunt her long after the immediate danger passed. She would have to live with the knowledge that her fear had given Sidwell the space he needed to escalate, and that Sonny, in saving them both, had stepped even deeper into the darkness he always promised he would avoid. Sidwell had wanted to prove that Sonny was no better than the monsters he fought. Ironically, in forcing Sonny to confront the full extent of the threat, Sidwell ensured that Sonny would become more ruthless in the name of protection, more willing to act preemptively against any hint of danger. Somewhere, in a secret place far from the eyes of Port Charles, Sidwell's fate remained an unanswered question, one Sonny preferred not to clarify. Was he alive, broken and hidden, his knowledge still being mined in the shadows? Or had his usefulness run out, his story ending where Sonny decided it had to? The town would never know for certain. All they would see were the results: a quieter harbor, rumors cut off before they could spread, troublemakers disappearing before their plans could fully form. The war Sidwell tried to start became invisible, absorbed into Sonny's ongoing struggle to hold his world together. And yet, beneath the surface, the echoes of that confrontation lingered. Sonny had proven once again that he could not be easily toppled. But Sidwell, in his twisted, obsessive way, had still left a mark. He had forced Sonny to look into the mirror of his own methods and decide, yet again, how far he was willing to go to protect the people he loved. The answer, as always, lay somewhere in the space between hero and villain, savior and executioner, a space where Sonny Corinthos would continue to walk, one calculated step at a time, waiting for the next enemy who believed they had finally found a way to make him fall.